This is FireSafe Mendocino, and our guest today that we aspire to bring you is the Unit Chief of CalFire, uh, George Gonzalez. My name's Cobb. I'm engineering in the studio, backed up, of course, as always, by Rich Culberson, our intrepid operator at the station at all times, and he's here. This show, if you're just tuning in to KZYX, is all about the fire safe councils that have been coming together over the last year or so in Mendocino County. We have been working together as local communities to get a foothold on how we respond to wildfire disasters. The county itself has stepped up and funded a few projects over the last year or so, which has allowed them to get a good, consistent director going on. Our guest and host, Scott Craddy, are you there?
We are good to go now. I want to welcome George Gonzalez. He is Mendocino Unit Chief for CalFire. I want to start off by thanking him and his entire crew for all they've done to keep us whole in these very challenging times. CalFire is the Department of Forestry and Fire and serves and safeguards the people and protects the property and resources of California, which, as all of you who have a pulse out there know, has become a colossal job. And with that, I want to turn it over to Chief Gonzalez to give a little intro and to what his job is, and to also tell us a little bit about what keeps him coming back and doing it.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mendocino County. Thank you for the invite. My name is George Gonzalez. I started in the fire service in 1990. I started with CDF in 1993. I've gone through the ranks from firefighter all the way through my current position as CalFire Unit Chief here in Mendocino County. Over the past several years, the motivation has slightly changed, but at the very end of the day, it's the gratification for seeing a job well done and seeing it carried through the entire process. Within the past few years, we've seen the fire intensities in California change. We've seen the rates of fire spread change, and they've all increased. But at the end of the day, the motivation is to protect the people of California and their properties. And I think at the very end of the day, that's what everybody has signed up for, whether they acknowledge it or realize it or not.
Great, thanks. So I just want to sort of just lay the groundwork for people and give a sense of what the span of the Mendocino unit is. And it is huge. I mean, off the top of my head, and I'm going to hope you can elaborate on these things, but I think, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, you've got like 6 geographic battalions, you've got a training battalion, there's a command center, there is dispatch not only for you, but for other emergency services that all get coordinated through there, including air dispatch, hazmat dispatch. There's Jackson State Demonstration Forest that's part of what you do, which is the largest demonstration forest in the state. A couple of correction camps. There's geology units and archaeology units. So it's just a huge. And can you kind of paint a picture for what all is what all is in the unit that you're keeping charge of?
Scott, you're hired. It's a little bit of everything here in Mendocino. We are probably one of the more fortunate units, as long as being one of the most diverse units. We have all aspects of research and development under Jackson Demonstration Forest, which is the largest CAL FIRE state-owned forest of almost 50,000 acres. We have projects there spanning from the 50s and 70s that are still ongoing under research and development. We do have 6 geographical battalion chiefs, which means throughout the county, every CAL FIRE station is supervised by a battalion chief in charge of that area. We do have a training battalion. We have a command center battalion. Our command center is different from a dispatch center in the sense of we have fire captains assigned to the command center that have the ability to utilize command and control functions if they receive a 911 report of whatever structure fire or vehicle fire, but it's actually worse than what the computer would generate a response. They have the ability, being a command and control center, to upgrade that dispatch to what they feel is appropriate. We do have, we do cover we're almost one of the largest CAL FIRE units in the state. We cover approximately 2.3 million acres of state responsibility area, SRA. And within this county, we also work with our counterparts. We work with local government, law enforcement, BLM, Forest Service in our local districts. The unit also is comprised of, we have a Ukiah Air Attack Base stationed out of the airport, where we have 2 air tankers and an air attack plane, which is an OV-10 Bronco, commonly referred to as a spotter plane. Up at headquarters, we have a hell attack program, which is soon going to be modified. We're expecting to receive the brand new Firehawk later this year. And we have 1 current inmate camp, and Chamberlain Creek has recently transitioned out of inmates. And we're leading the charge to make that the first fire center retrofit in the state of California. And my goal is to have firefighters, National Guard, and CCC units available and responding out of there by this summer. I believe that encompasses most of the unit. I'm sure I forgot some stuff, but that is the overall look of it.
That is huge. And the scope, the geographic area that you discovered, is it literally Mendocino County, or is it somewhat beyond that?
Actually, great question. Obviously, Mendocino County geographically is greater in acreage. The 2.3 million is what we protect. But because of access, such as Covelo, we do go into Trinity County, and we do go into Humboldt counties as well.
Cool. You touched on this, but the coordination of these things, which I think y'all are central to, is pretty massive. There's, can you give us a bit of that? You're interfacing with Forest Service, you're interfacing with local fire districts, and probably a lot of other things that I can't imagine that are all involved in putting together a response.
Yeah, essentially every component of fire, law, and EMS we work with directly and some indirectly. We either dispatch for that service, or they're an immediate contact for us to work with that service. BIA, BLM, law enforcement, Forest Service, everybody here locally we work with. And it just, while we're on this topic, Scott, I also want to mention that in the past few years, after working with these professionals, the EMS, our local law enforcement, our local fire districts, Mendocino County is very fortunate. They have absolutely great people working within the county and dedicating their careers in this county, and it shows each and every single year. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that the people we're working with are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be able to attend some of the Mendocino County Fire Chiefs Association meetings, and I know CAL FIRE is an integral part of that, as are the sheriffs. And I mean, there's a huge list of participating entities that chip in and collaborate there, and it is a really great spirit of cooperation in the county. So,
absolutely.
I wanted to back up and sort of get a sense of a year in the life of CAL FIRE. If you could maybe walk us a little bit through the seasons. I mean, I think we know fire season and what your focus is there, but you know, here we are sitting in the off season. So how does it shift? What are you, what's taking up your time at the moment, and how does that transition through the year?
Excellent question, Scott. I guess I'll back up a little bit. When I started CDF in 1993, a typical fire season was about 4 months long, and we had ample time during the winter for training, vacation, and preparation for summer. And for the past several years, we have been laying off our seasonals right around 9 or 10 months into the year. Our seasonals are almost going year round, which is fairly new to the department. So currently, if we're not assigned to an incident, which we staff up engines year round, and throughout the state, our command center reports to the Northern Region Command Center, which is based out of Reading. And we have engines strategically placed throughout the state of California all year long. So if there is a Lake Orville dam rupture, we have dozers and engines available to respond. If we have a fire in Southern California, we have strike teams available. So we always maintain staffing 24/7, 365. And our current off time now, for Mendocino unit, we are largely concentrating on our VMP program, Vegetation Management Program, and seeing what we could do in areas that need some attention as fire breaks, shaded fuel breaks, road access, or actual controlled burns. There's a mixture of that. There's a mixture of training, mandated annual training that everybody is signed up for, that we try to get everybody into. And in between the prevention aspect, defensible space inspections, and being ready to respond to any emergency in the state, our off time isn't really our off time anymore. It's just time that we're not committed to a fire.
Yeah, that sort of brings up, I think you led right into the next thing and maybe covered it, but the scope of things, and we'll talk about prescribed burn a little down the road, but there's a huge component of vegetation management. There's also sort of the home inspection process. That's another part of, could you go into a little bit about what CAL FIRE's role in that and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. Under Public Resources Code 4291, CAL FIRE has developed a inspection program, a defensible space inspection program. And within that program, it essentially has CAL FIRE personnel that go out to areas of the community and inspect their properties. If they allow us in, they allow us to inspect their properties. And we review the basics of defensible spacing. So for example, making sure the trees are trimmed, making sure the leaves are out of the gutters, making sure we have adequate areas of protection, of the grass is mowed up to 100 feet or the property line, things like that. Everybody in Mendocino County should have been exposed to it and should have at least seen us in their neighborhoods trying to make access. But with that, with current COVID-19, it's made it a little bit difficult to actually get personnel out to physical residences. But with that being said, I also think it's a great time for landowners and renters to be able to do self-inspections. And if you want an inspection, we can set it up so we could go out to that property and maintain social distancing and give guidance if needed. But all our defensible spacing, our LE 100 program, is all available online. And we're more than willing to help out with any aspects of it.
Yeah, and we'll circle back a little bit to that later on. There's a lot of great resources on the CAL FIRE website for that. In terms of I know just defensible space inspections are a huge workload. Even I've been working with the county a little bit on helping shape up a fire abatement ordinance to give them some tools. And I know that Brook Trails has a fairly aggressive program and even a full-time person on it that still is not able to sort of just keep up with that relatively small community. How many people do you have that are, what kind of resource do you have that's attempting to cover all of Mendocino with that program?
Well, out of our 10 stations, 16 fully staffed engine companies, and our 300 personnel. At the end of the day, all of our field personnel are available and do some sort of defensible space. And enforcement really wouldn't be a good word for, but defensible space education is what we'll call it. And our engine companies, are available to assist. In the current budget proposed by the governor, it sounds like each CAL FIRE unit will be receiving money for defensible space inspectors. That is their sole job for the year. And we're very grateful for that as well. Cool.
Guys, there's some, I think, exciting budget news that maybe we'll get into coming up. And I'm going to sort of move into I think that's a great job sort of setting the stage about what the unit is. Cobb, do you need to jump in?
Just wanted everybody to know that if you just tuned in, this is KZYX Radio. We're listening to the Fire Safe Mendocino radio show. Our host is Director Scott Craddy, and our guest today is Unit Chief George Gonzalez of CAL FIRE. And we're talking about all things that CAL FIRE does to serve our community, of which is a very broad list. And yeah, let's continue.
Okay, but before we go into sort of the situation going forward, here's a kind of a bridging thing, which is COVID, which we haven't brought up yet. And I just wanted to, since that's on everybody's minds as well, it's kind of ranks right up there with fire. And interestingly enough, actually, I was on one of the county planning calls, and there was one of those word association things where you got to pick which thing worried you the most. And despite the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, wildfire actually came up just ahead of pandemic on the list. So those two things are neck and neck, and they obviously interact a lot. So if you could maybe just give us a little bit about how that's complicated this year's work for you, and how you've adapted to it, and I guess most importantly, coming out of it, where you're at with the vaccination process for the CAL FIRE folks.
Great question, Scott. We are at the point where we are working with the county, and I believe tomorrow officially we could start getting our vaccinations. And that'll be the first step in a multi-step process to getting vaccinations for the CAL FIRE personnel. Now, the pandemic, COVID, and fires. It has added an element of difficulty to our response. For our agency, we're pretty accustomed to dealing with the unexpected and with the odds against us. So, Scott, I don't know if you had a chance to go to our incident base this summer out of Ukiah when we were fighting the August complex. If not, I'll get you on one of our incidents this summer. We implemented several changes to our incident bases. One of them being a temperature check station, a walk through temperature check station as you report incident base. Once you enter incident base, you will see a never-ending sight of wash stations, alcohol, hand wash stations, distancing guidelines, mask wearing, and everything possible to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Our standards have far increased as far as cleaning and sterilizing elements of the incident base, the chairs, the tables, which was already done above and beyond par. Now it goes through the roof as far as how many times a day we do it. We do it per person now. So the second somebody sits in a seat and they get up, that seat, the table, everything gets washed and sterilized again. Mask wearing, mandatory mask wearing for everybody, social distancing, and we've really grown accustomed to that new way of life. And the incident base this summer, the August complex, which was a very long time frame. It was over a month in as far as the incident base. As far as I'm aware of, we didn't have a single COVID outbreak. And what we did notice as far as an agency, overall agency, is Usually there'll be a cold or flu that runs through incident base and knocks out, 15, 20, 30 people. But because of all the guidelines and the distancing, we noticed that the colds and the flus were dramatically reduced this year.
Fringe benefit.
Yeah.
It's got to have kind of a tough reverse side in just sort of maintaining the camaraderie, though, and the sort of spirit.
It is tough, especially, if you're on like an engine company and your partners, your 3 other fellow firefighters are right there with you. There's always a window open, there's mask wearing, there's all these elements that make it difficult to communicate. And as humans, we're pretty accustomed to communicating and verbalizing our thoughts. Specifically, when you're going to an incident, if you're dispatched to a fire, you're supposed to read the smoke, the color of the smoke, the direction of the smoke, things like that, and articulate those in the engine as you respond. That way the entire crew is informed upon your arrival. We still do that, but it adds another element of difficulty while you're doing that.
Thanks. So I want to sort of look forward, and one of the things that the Fire Safe Council is attempting to do more and more. We are a super tiny organization, but we have been part of our mission this year has been attempting to make sure we get out to all parts of the county as much as possible. Relative to that, there's something that you said at the last fire chiefs meeting that really struck me is that they're unlike kind of the way we're used to thinking of things in the past, where there are cool pockets on the coast that we don't have to worry about fire so much. That's just really not the case going forward anymore. That kind of everything is in play, and we need to start thinking differently about that. Could you elaborate a bit on that and give us your thoughts about how the landscape's changing in terms of how we need to defend the county?
Yeah, historically, we did have areas that were a little bit more fire resistive. Some areas of the coast would only burn at certain time frames of the year, either early spring or late fall. We used to have wet areas, San Luis Obispo on the coastline, where you wouldn't really get a large fire due to the overall general humidity of the coast, similar to our Fort Braggs and Point Arenas. All that's changed. California is a dry bed. We have been going through a dry spell. We've been going through a drought, and all of California is susceptible to a fire. Coast, inland, the Sierras, everywhere is susceptible to fire, which I think if we tie it back into our local county, we have seen this very close and near and dear to our hearts. We have had fires in this county that have never been seen before. In 2017, we had a fire that burned from Potter Valley all the way into Redwood Valley in a few minutes, consuming hundreds of homes and losing lives. 2018, we had the first mega fire, which happened to be the largest fire in California history. And then this year, we rewrote the record books again, unfortunately, with the largest fire in California history again. It's so big that it's commonly being referred to as the Giga Fire, historically, where we've had mega fires. But we've seen this right in our backyard. This is occurring within Mendocino County, and those are all indicators. If you could get a fire of that size and those rates of spread into Mendocino County, it means we could get fires anywhere in Mendocino County. We could get it on the coast. We could get it in the evenings. We can get it in the mornings. We can get it at night. It may not be a mega fire or a giga fire, but every square inch of Mendocino County is susceptible.
Yeah, frightening. Just a little aside on that, and a cue to everybody out there to make sure you keep doing your little bit of fire prep during what seems like this off season. I Where one of the things the Fire Safe Council is overseeing at the moment is a fuel break that's going in, kind of extending the CAL FIRE line behind Lovers Lane out towards the college behind Ukiah. And I was just looking at the December invoices for that and saw that we've got a water buffalo out there in the middle of December. And I called to find out why we're doing that. And the answer is we had some red flag days in December. So it's protocol, which is something I would have never imagined in the past. So we all definitely need to have a heightened level. And speaking of heightened level, going into that, I mean, some of the good news is let's bridge to the funding situation for 2021, which I think we're just beginning to find out about. But as I understand, there's some good news. So are you looking at having to cut back things, or are you looking at having some new resources and being able to add some things to the plate in 2021?
Scott, before I answer that, I just want to thank you for having a water buffalo in December on your projects. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be the new normal for Mendocino County. And that extends all the way out through construction companies, blacktop companies, whomever. I think it is the responsibility of us all to have water buffaloes in those areas where something could start. So thank you for doing it. And historically, no, we've never needed a water buffalo in December. It is almost unheard of. But I want to say 2 years ago, on the Thomas incident in Southern California, we were trying to get people home for Christmas because people were actively engaged in fire suppression on December 23rd, and California's just changed. It has changed. Budgets are looking good. We did, as CAL FIRE employees, we did receive a pay cut. We're kind of accustomed to that being state employees, but something that makes me extremely happy is the fact that our budget was not cut, which is fairly amazing. Not only did it not get cut, but CAL FIRE participated in 16 budget change proposals, BCPs, with the governor's office. Some of them are solely CAL FIRE, and others are in combination with other state agencies. And we are receiving, on top of our budget, we are receiving additional monies for fire preparedness, fire prevention, additional staffing, and several elements, a helicopter program, the new Firehawk program, several elements were actually made the governor's budget, and he approved it. Therefore, CAL FIRE's budget was not cut, but it was actually in one-time payments. It was actually increased. For example, we have extra resource management personnel on one of the BCPs under resource management. We have greenhouse gas grants. We have CEQA components to continue to do VMPs and all the elements needed to conduct a VMP controlled burn, such as the California Environmental Qualities Act, such as the archaeological review contracts, which are all very time consuming. But we did receive monies in the 21 budget, and we were not cut, which is a major success for not only the department, but for every person in California. That is huge.
I understand. I was on a readout for I understand it, I think, sort of $1 billion budget proposal that's coming out yesterday. And it sounded like there's things have gotten very serious about shifting the mission from fire suppression to one that brings in a much bigger component of forest health and mitigation and vegetation management work. Is that your impression as well?
Yes, I'd say equally with fire suppression are all the other aspects of forest health and improvement, just like you stated. And those are some of the elements where CAL FIRE seems to be a single dimensional one-lane road. And then once you start peeling the layers back, you start to see within our resource management program and with our environmental studies programs that yes, we do have fire, we do have law enforcement, but a major component, equal in size, are the health of the forest and the resources of California, the watersheds, and sustainable health for our forest under these extreme droughts that we're in. And our budget is reflecting that, and we really appreciate that.
Let's see. I'm going to save a little bit to talk about Jackson at the end, but before a couple more things I want to squeeze in there. We had the Mendocino County Prescribed Burn Association on a show or two back, and prescribed fire seems to be sort of becoming universally acknowledged as a really important component of the program going forward. How are you seeing that evolve locally? Are there what kind of plans do you have for the season coming forward on prescribed burning?
We do have several projects on our priority list within the unit. I want to say we have approximately 15 high visibility projects that we are currently working on. It does take CAL FIRE. It does take us a little bit from the start, the inception of a project, to actually putting fire on the ground. Many elements to it with CEQA, the ARC review, Migrating Birds Act, things like that. So it does take in the area of 12 to 18 months to actually put a fire on the ground. But we are definitely working on that. We are seeking alternative routes for some of those avenues to expedite the system. And we also want to maintain what we have on a lot of the projects. And a lot of the projects we look for are in critical areas of the county that have life threat, structure threat, and also a good tactical advantage on where we could put a good fire break in, such as the west side of Ukiah, if you've seen that fire break and that VMP program. So with those, that's some of the stuff we're looking at. However, that's stuff that CAL FIRE gets involved in. It wasn't too incredibly long ago, 70s and 80s, where landowners used to conduct broadcast burns on their own property every single year. And that is a possibility within receiving a smoke management permit and a CAL FIRE permit. It's called the LE7 permit. It allows you to do some broadcast burns on your property if it's obviously meets the prescription of burn day status and smoke management plan, things like that. But that was a common practice in this county, and it's tremendously slowed down. I do think we have maybe 2 or 3 people in the county that still utilize this program, but not many. A lot of residents could still be doing a lot of their broadcasting of their smaller parcels on their properties, and do it quite successfully if done in the right time of year. Wintertime, low intensity fire, and consuming all the dead vegetation within their own property.
So if you just tuned in, this is KZYX Radio. This is the Fire Safe Mendocino County radio show. My name is Cobb Engineering in the studio. Our host today is Fire Safe Council Director Scott Craddy, and our guest is Unit Chief George Gonzalez of CAL FIRE. I have a question, George, in terms of the vegetation management program and CAL FIRE suppression efforts. Have you seen an intersection there between, fire prevention efforts in recent years by, fire safe councils locally and your own vegetation management programs, and how that's affected your suppression efforts at all?
Great question. We've had some great scenarios. I'll mention a recent one. Just before the start of the August complex on September 7th, 2020, we had a vegetation fire that occurred up above road trails. And we were able to utilize a lot of the prevention efforts that were done in that area, such as an alternative road for equipment access, a fire break, and a shaded fuel break. And these elements were actually utilized during that fire, and that was part of a major success. That fire had the ability to burn into the Brook Trails proper, where we have approximately 3,500 homes and approximately 5,000 people that live. Another example of that would have been during the 2018 siege. We had been conducting controlled burns and vegetation management programs in Hopland Research Extension Center out of Hopland. And one of our heliTAC captains was able to, while fighting the fire in 2018, was able to utilize a lot of these BMP's areas as tactical advantages, where they're going on the helicopter, they'd land on one of these areas that had been burned and would use that land as a holding point for the oncoming fire. So we've had great success with them. We're just looking at doing more of these programs throughout the county. We have a very large county. So we are looking to do more of them. And if private people want to do more of it on their own land, we do support that. And we're one phone call away from any questions they may have. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that for a second, that is certainly one of the central themes of the Fire Safe Council, is that there's just never going to be enough resources to have somebody come in and take care of everything for us. So, and there's always going to be more that needs to be done to get ready. Things are always growing back.
Yeah.
Maintenance, even if you've done it, you've got it taken care of perfectly, and your neighbor hasn't, you're still more in jeopardy. So there's room to go help your neighbor. But it is incumbent on everybody to be looking at their defensible space and home hardening and keeping the ingress and egress routes around them clear, and participating with their neighborhood in these projects. And I do want to say, definitely, you already covered it, but I know the Prescribed Burn Association is getting more and more active, and I understand they did a project out in Anderson Valley this year, and CalFire was there supporting with backup on that. So I think that the partnership is there, waiting to be had for people that are getting active and taking care of their projects.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. And I also want to mention one last thing on the fire in Brook Trails. The fire name was the Oak Incident, but you mentioned ingress and egress, and that was probably one of the best exit scenarios I've seen in my career. We had contraflow, so we had 2 lanes of traffic heading down off the Sherwood Road. We had emergency equipment accessing off the New Furco Road side of things that had been maintained and was part of a governor's project. The Sheriff's Department, Brook Trails community, everybody, that was as good as things get for a scenario like that. Very, very impressive.
Yep, and a bit of that is definitely a shout out to neighborhood organization Sherwood Firewise / Fire Safe Council has
absolutely
done tremendous work. They're kind of a model for what can be
absolutely
done. As we're getting close to the end, and I want to give you a chance to wrap up, I know the Jackson State Demonstration Forest and the timber processing plans there has been a big concern for folks on this radio station. There was a program, the Ecology Hour, back on December 29th. Had a group called Mendocino Trail Stewards at mendocinotrailstewards.org if people want to check that out. That raised a number of concerns, ranging from the number of larger trees that are looking at being taken and the effect on recreational value of the forest, to concerns about regeneration in the face of changing climate if we take things at this point. So there's really kind of a vast range of concerns. And I guess my first question is, for the people who have those concerns, what's the most effective way they can communicate those and express those with CAL FIRE? What should, to the extent they're out there concerned and organizing and have a lot of good input, what's the best way to bring that forward?
Great question. The forest manager is Mike Powers. Mike Powers is in charge of the entire forest. He works for me. But along with that, he's one phone call away. But with that, several years ago, the Jackson Advisory Group was established, which is comprised of locals, civilians not affiliated with CAL FIRE. And all this stuff is vetted through that group. All the logging programs, potential logging, things like that is vetted through that group, just so we have public buy-in. As far as the actual concerns that we currently have, some of them that were mentioned were fire concerns, and California is susceptible to burning no matter what. What I have noticed in the past several years is areas that have had recent logging, we have better access roads in there, and by thinning, not complete clear cut, but by thinning the forests and taking out some of the dead and dying underlying type of brush, things like that, it's actually one, allowed our resources to get in there sooner, earlier, quicker because of the road system. And because of the thinning, it has made it so the fires don't get well established and or large. We've actually had some successes. I want to say we had a fire in Comshi, and I don't remember the exact year, 2014, 2015, maybe 2016, out in Comshi, where it had been in a treated area as well. And the fire made it to that treated area, but it slowed down, and we were able to actually get great containment on those sides of the fire because of the road systems that were in there, and the clarity of the fuel beds that were in there made it easier for our equipment to drop from the sky, helicopters and air tankers, and for the engines and dozers to get it in there on the ground.
So we are coming to the end, and we're probably close enough that it's time to see if you have anything you want to say wrapping up in terms of priorities and challenges and things that the good folks of Mendocino can do to keep up with what's going on at CAL FIRE if they're interested in doing that. Any other things about what they can do to help make sure that we're working together.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, Scott. If we all reach out and contact the appropriate entity, whether it's the Prescribed Fire Council or Mendocino Fire Safe Council or CAL FIRE, and put topics up on the radar between all the entities, that is a big thing for all of us to see. And the biggest one for us, if at the very end of the day, is have your escape routes, have them well known, practice them, be all of our recommendations as far as defensible space inspections, home hardening, vegetation management online, fire.ca.gov, and readyforwildfire.org. Other than that, you could reach out to any CAL FIRE personnel, any of our battalion chiefs, anybody, and we could get hopefully any of your questions answered. And thank you very much, Scott, for yourself for allowing us to get some time on the radio. And hopefully we do this again before fire season.
Sounds great. Appreciate your time. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. And yeah, reemphasize the websites that Chief Gonzalez mentioned are well worth checking out. The Mendocino County Fire Safe Council is firesafemendocino.org, and we also have a wealth of material there, including our new home hardening step-by-step video series. So on this rainy afternoon, if you're stuck at home, those are some good places to do some browsing. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.